Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Blacklist. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, picking up where the last episode left off, we have Liz and Wrestler doing their thing, which I've commented on before. It's like, I've always kind of felt like the show was always heading in that direction. It just actually took way longer than I thought it would. I would have expected there to be a Liz and Wrestler thing like way before now. I mean, there's been hints to like that going to be the thing, but it never kind of ever became official until more recently, you know? So I just always thought it was kind of interesting. But when it was all said and done, Wrestler is trying to tell her like, do not go after Reddington. Don't do this. But for Liz, she's kind of set in her path. So she plans on trying to ally herself up because first she goes to Tom's like secret place he had and gathers up what little resources she can. She's trying to get Essie to hey, take this, kind of, you're able to kind of get out of the country. It's like, yeah, but Essie's like, no, we're in this together. We're going to need a lot more than this. So she's going to try and change a lot of Reddington's allies into enemies, ends up going to Tadashi, and it's like, I need you to work through this list. And he's like, nah, I'm loyal to Mr. Reddington. She's like, but he's dying. And it's like, really? And it's like, yeah, so I need you to hack into this list, you know? And he goes to Reddington, and it's like, oh, so is it true? It's like, he's like, oh, aspirins and stuff like that, talking about how, like, people don't even wait till you get cold. Basically, they don't even wait for the body to be cold yet before they're ready to just dig your grave for you. But Tadashi's like, yeah, she did kind of, you know, and he helped her. And I love that, like, back and forth. She's working her way down the list. You have Reddington at the same time, like, trying to block her on every front, working her way down the list. I even love that got to Home Dude, and he ended up actually doing conference calls. So Liz and Reddington are talking to each other at the same time. It was just, I loved it. But, it's this complicated thing. Obviously, you know, the FBI's in a position of like, you know, what do we do? It's like, Wrestler's the most sympathetic in the situation, but Park is kind of like, you know, well, Liz doing what she's doing as well is not really that great, but it's like, well, he did kill her mom, and it's like, are we really going to be treating Liz the same way as Reddington, considering all the terrible stuff that he's done? Because they want to say like, hey, we're looking for her vehicle without putting a bolo out for her vehicle, not saying, because they don't want to put a manhunt out there for Liz, because if Liz is on the run in this big manhunt, like she was in season 3, then it turns into the whole debacle, and there's no going back. I mean, granted, she went down this route before, they're not, because also, doing this, taking her in publicly like that would have to basically lead to the whole thing of explaining how they found themselves in this situation in the first place, and that had to be probably publicly revealing the whole Reddington thing, which they also went down that route, you know, to a degree. Was that last season, or was that season before? No, that was season 6, right? I'm like, yeah, I think that was season 6. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a complicated situation for them, because it's like, yeah, but if we don't stop Liz before she kind of crosses that line before it's too late, you know. Wrestler does bring up the point that, like, when it's all said and done and you met, it's one thing to kind of have in your mind, you're going to take down Liz and bring her in. Obviously, don't want any harm to anybody. But at the end of the day, it's like, when it's face to face, it's different, because after, like, especially for Aram and Wrestler, they've known Liz for years. Cooper, they've known her for years. They're a family. Park, I think, comes in because obviously she's still kind of relatively new to the team, but I think she spent enough time with Liz that there's something there. Granted, she doesn't have the deepest bonds like everyone else does. Like, they are more of a family, like, you know, so she's the one that can be a little more objective with this situation. Even she recognizes Reddington for being the piece of crap that he is, but even she's kind of like, well, we kind of have to do our job. But, you know, Liz, considering everything that happened with Park and her past, and Liz finding out and not doing anything really about, you know, so I think she probably would want to cut Liz some slack, especially when it's like, oh, considering the circumstance, it's like, this was your mom that was murdered. Granted, your mom was like a Russian spy and kind of did a lot of stuff on her in her own right, but still, so Liz makes her way to Marvin, is asking Marvin, it's like, and Marvin's like, oh, Reddington's my friend. And she's like, really? No. The fact is, so many people, like, cause she even had the conversation with Essie, like, why are so many people loyal to him? It's like, why are they so scared to betray him? It's like, and she's like, you don't know? It's fear. Because Liz is in a very interesting position. She's one of the unique people that's like, oh, she's not afraid of Reddington. Because also, she has the benefit of Reddington will never do anything to her. He never could. he would never want to. So she has that benefit. So I think that makes her a little fearless in that regard. Everyone else doesn't have that guarantee. It's like, oh, you screw over Reddington, you know what the consequences are going to be. So that has bought him loyalty. Once again, it's that whole thing. I think I referenced it before in the last episode, but it's a whole, might have been this or it might have been something else, but the whole Henry VIII. I keep quoting it being Henry VIII. I think it's him, but I think I only know that because of Tudors. I've never seen the show, but I remember seeing previews and commercials when the show was originally airing. But it's like, is it better to be feared or loved? I think the whole thing was, why choose? But, in Reddington's case, it's kind of more so to be feared, but that leads to people being more likely to betray you. But that fear does keep most people in line, as we see in this episode. But it's like, I don't know. I wish we could have heard. I would have loved to have seen, because obviously Liz was talking to Glenn. I would have loved to have heard exactly what he said, what Reddington had. Because Reddington was like, okay, Glenn was like, I'm sorry, Reddington, I betrayed. I'm just messing with you. I'm with you all the way, bow. Because it's Glenn. Glenn went about it that way. He had to, because it's Glenn. But Wrestler and Aram are looking after Agnes, keeping an eye on her, because it's like, there's no way Liz is going to leave without Agnes. But, it's like, she calling up Wrestler one more time and be like, hey, just give me my daughter. It's like, yeah, but like, if you do this, are you really going to leave? She's like, I want my daughter. It's like, are you going to leave her behind? She's like, because he's like, that's the same thing your mother did. She's like, I'm not going to make those same mistakes my mom did leaving. But it's like, so then turn yourself in to just stop this before it gets too out of hand, before it's too late. But Liz is like, I have to go. And she's like, because she's like, she's afraid that anytime they talk, like, she doesn't want to ever say goodbye. So this time she was kind of saying, this has to be goodbye for real this time. Then later on, she sends the list of all the stuff that Agnes would like, the cartoons and stuff, while Aram is doing the whole paper plane things with her, which is, that whole thing between Aram and Agnes was super adorable. He's like, yeah, you probably don't remember me. I was actually there when you were christened and everything. You're only like, a couple months old. He's like, but if you actually did remember, that'd be actually, pretty dope, and it's just like this little moment. But him later on being like, yeah, so she's actually kicking my butt with this whole paper plane things, even though she didn't know how to, and it's like, now she does, and she's kicking my, it was super adorable, him, because even Wrestler was like, don't worry, she's got some good uncles looking out for her. I was like, the feels, this family. But I figured as much it was a setup, because, like, Liz is smart. Like, not only is she an FBI agent, which she's a very, really good and very capable FBI agent, she's actually a very smart and capable criminal as well. So she knew that Wrestler would be listening in and, like, having someone check out the background noise and know where she was. Like, she figured that much. She accounted for a lot of that. I mean, that's the thing. She knows the FBI's protocols and how they'll think. She's worked with these group of people for years, so she knows how they think. She's been around Reddington for years, so she knows exactly how he thinks. So she can manipulate and maneuver, which that's what she does in this episode. Gets him down to the train station. She left like 2 minutes after she called Wrestler to draw them out. Because even Reddington, it's like, you're a good agent, but it's like, could you are you a better friend? He's like, well, you think this is all some trap or something? And he's like, I believe Liz. And he was like, that, and as he was leaving, he was like, that's my problem. It's like, the fact is that, and this kind of goes into it later on, but it's like, because you guys believe in her so much, you're letting so much other stuff, like, you're letting her manipulate you. And he's like, I'm afraid that's my problem. The thing is that you do believe her, that she can easily sway your hearts a lot more than she can Reddington. And like, I mean, even without trying, she can, the entire situation is knocking Reddington off kilter. Like, once again, him and Liz have been at odds before, never to this extent, like, yeah, there's been bad blood, there's been issues, I brought that up before, but it's like, it's never been this bad before. And so, especially because she's basically going for the jugular when it comes to this situation, so. But Liz comes back, because Aram's like the only one there, because Cooper went with Park and Wrestler, because he's like, if we're all together, we'll give each other the strength to do this. Because if we're alone, like if it's just you, if it's just me, we're most likely going to falter. And sadly, that ends up being the case with Aram, because she's like, I want my daughter, and it's like, and Aram, it's like, I get it, like, he killed your mom, like, I understand that, but it's like, you going down this path, it's like, you signed my name, you forged my name, you almost killed Reddington, you almost killed Wrestler with that bomb. It's like, I knew who you were, Liz. I don't recognize who you've become right now. But it's like, he still, at the end of the day, ended up giving her the 2-minute head start that she needed to get out with Agnes. And he even tells Wrestler, it's like, you're right, it is different in person. You know, it's just like, it's like, because they're coming at this from, it's not like she's just some other criminal. This is their friend. This is family. And considering the circumstances of what led her down this path, it also makes you a little sympathetic of like what she's doing. But it is still that thing of and even Aram ends up saying it at the end of the episode. It's like, but what if we let our feelings for Liz get in the way? Because Harold was saying that he can't even, because he was like, Aram and Russell were saying like, we should kind of bow out of this because we can't be objective when it comes to this. But Cooper's like, I can't either, because at every point in this investigation, he's like, yes, I want her captured and stopped. But he's like, there is a part of me that was relieved every time when she got away with Agnes. So for him, it's like, we all want this to end differently. But for him, it's like, we can't let some other, like a team that's not emotionally invested in her. Granted, that'd probably be the better option, but it's like anyone else, if they leave this to some other group of other agents, they're going to go at this like, oh, we got to track her. They're going to treat her just like any criminal. It's like, at least they will kind of keep the kid gloves on when it comes to her. But Aram brings up the good point of, what if our feelings, our attachment to her is getting in the way, and she does succeed in killing Reddington? Because if she crosses that line, there is no coming back, And she's probably thought about that, but I think at the end of the day, I don't think she realizes how much that's going to change her, because she's so blinded by her rage right now. But I think when it's all said and done, when she kills Reddington, she won't get the relief that she thinks she is. I think it's going to break her in a way she doesn't think. She thinks like, once I take care of Reddington, I'll be satisfied. But it's like, you won't be satisfied. I think it will break you. It will hurt you more than you thought it would. You're thinking like, oh, it'll be no problem. It's like, but considering everything he's taught you, been by your side through everything, like the ups and the downs, like, you love Reddington and he loves you, and it's like he is family regardless, and that makes it that much more complicated, So I'm so curious to see how they are going to handle this, because like, yeah, we got to be the ones to take down Liz, but we also have to make sure it's before she actually kills Reddington. Which, speaking of Reddington, I love the whole, like, well, he's got this whole side other thing, because obviously it's like, oh, our friend from the East wants to set up a meeting. It's like, oh, you need to be in Moscow the day after tomorrow. So it's like, okay, gotta be, because for him, he didn't want to deal with it at first, because he's like, I literally don't think I have strength to fight another war on another front. Like, he's so focused on the Liz thing. So he has Tadashi, like that lady, they went to her house, and he was like, oh, don't worry. It's like, you've been kind of single, you haven't paid your federal taxes in 4 years, state in 3. And he's like, I get it. Avoiding taxes, he's like, I understand the righteousness of it, or rather, the not righteousness of it, the wrong of it. But still, it's kind of like, hey, he's like, honestly, your mom being sick and everything. He's like, I completely understand that. As a criminal who avoids taxes, I understand. Obviously, it's still wrong, but, I get you. And especially the reason why. So it's like, hey, I'm helping you out. You just help me out, because another connection. It's like, hey, I'm working on some stuff, and basically his name came up in some committee investigation thing, and he needed Reddington to remove his name, and that's where the lady plays her part, where it's just kind of like, she has to pour coffee on it, and it's just kind of like, all right, I gotta hang up now, because I gotta go get fired, because it's like, hey, you get to write your story, whether it ends up being a comedy or a tragedy. And I always love that poeticness of life, that people were saying, like, life can be either a comedy or a tragedy, and some people are like, hey, I'd rather laugh than cry. So I just always like that Shakespeare. I think it's a Shakespeare thing, referring to life as just purely a comedy or a tragedy, that life can be either or. So I think that's a Shakespeare thing. It's definitely like an old school literature thing. And I want to say Shakespeare, but I could be mistaken. But when the time came and he confronts Marvin because he heard what Donald said, I mean, that was kind of the whole point. For Liz was hoping that Donald would kind of gloat and throw that in Reddington's face. It went kind of according to plan. I was hoping, Because I figured Skip would be on like, it's like, Marvin's like, really? My name is all over? Don't you think I would kind of, but he's like, Reddington's like, this is most likely you getting back at me for the fact that you spent 3 years in prison. He's like, I did it because I am loyal to you, even referring, because I figured, because Liz made a point to be like, you know, just because you're friends and stuff like that, it won't stop Reddington from basically taking you out if necessary, that he has no real friendships. It's all business interactions, and the moment you're no longer useful, even you, Marvin, he will take you down. So, signing everything over to Skip, I figured things were going to play out that way, but I was almost hoping that Reddington was playing Skip, and he's like, oh, Skip, I actually knew you the entire time. I just needed this Marvin thing to play out this way so I can, but the moment we start hearing the sounds later, I'm like, oh, Skip's not around, so you're not play acting, you're kind of diving into this. I was like, damn. And it turns out Skip was a guy, and he managed to get Liz 34 million euros, as he was saying it was like 45 million in US dollars. But because of that, Liz just robbed Reddington blind. It's not like the only account he has, but it is like it's still a substantial chunk of his empire that she kind of took. Because even Marvin was saying like, okay, you might not like Reddington, but you are getting the keys to the castle, because he's like, oh, when I get the reins of the castle, we can split things 50-50. He's like, you're literally going to get it when Reddington kicks the bucket. Like, you get everything anyway, so just wait. But for her, it's like, I can't. I need him going now. But, and after everything Reddington did to Marvin, and it's like, oh, like, it's kind of like you're trying to make up for it, but it's still kind of like, yeah, you tortured him, and that's going to compromise that relationship. Yeah, Marvin's probably going to be pissed at you for a while. I don't know if he's necessarily going to come back from that betrayal. I mean, granted, you didn't, you didn't Kate him, as in, like, you didn't go down the same route with Kate, so there's that benefit, but it's still like, yeah, you tortured him. He was trying to tell you the truth from the beginning, and you didn't listen. And in that moment, Liz came out on top, and she's kind of rubbing his face in it, and he's like, basically, don't count your chickens before it's hatched. It's like, you've had this one victory, you've won this battle, the war isn't over. But that's definitely going to be interesting to see how that dynamic ends up playing out, like where him and Marvin stand, because Marvin's probably going to be a little, I'm not going to be as quickly to work with you in this regard. Well, like I said, we'll see. But it kind of works in her favor, because now one of his most powerful and dearest allies probably going to be super reluctant to help him, so it kind of cripples him to a certain extent. He still has a lot of his network in play, but I'm sure Liz is going to find a way to kind of chip away at that in some shape or form. We'll see. But another powerful moment between this was like Dembe asking, he's like, I need you to, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest with me. Even suggesting, was this entire thing his plan? It's like, you killing Katerina in front of her, was that on purpose to basically harden her? Because living the life that she was in, she could never dive into that criminal world, into that darkness. You are in that darkness, but she could never fully come over to that side. But now that you put her in this situation, she's kind of slid over there. So it's like, was everything you've done up to now on purpose? Because all of that she's been through has hardened Liz and kind of turned her into the criminal in this, like, and it's actually made that transition into this world that much easier. And he's even, was that your plan the entire time? And then Reddington's like, I had no plan. Now, I think that's fascinating, because you would think the entire time like he had a plan for Liz, but it's like, and I've talked about this before, Liz has always been and will continue to always be his blind spot. Like, he always has a blind spot when it comes to Liz. He never sees it coming when, the time she's kind of turned against him, like the whole season 6 situation. Like, she completely blindsided him because he didn't see it coming, because he never expects any, because he gives her a lot more leeway than he would any other person, because she's important to him. She's special to him. And I just think that's fascinating, because I think that's kind of suggesting, like, he didn't think too much about this. Like, when he came to the Liz life, it's like he had some small plans, but it was never like a grand plan. He just wanted to be in her life, look after her, that's about it. And things kind of probably went the way, I think, it almost seems like he's almost implying, like, it was almost an audible in mode. Like, obviously the gist of, like, getting arrested and stuff like that was that. But even then, it's like, where we are now, he's like, I'm kind of figuring this out as we go. Like, I never planned this far ahead with Liz. I don't think he thought, like, I don't even know if he thought from the very beginning that he was always going to leave the Empire tour. Maybe he was, but getting to that point, he never thought it would be here. I mean, you can never, like, where their story's taking them, Katarina, you can never predict that, you know? So, there was a lot of hiccups along the way, but at the end of the episode, there's a whole situation with Reddington talking to its friend, and it's like, okay, it's like, because Liz is the one spreading the rumors to all his allies that, like, oh, you're in 13, which dude is like, well, yes, yeah, you might be able to squash it now as, like, oh, a rumor, but we both know it's true, which I'm like, oh, so this is confirming that he is, in fact, in 13, or is Reddington letting this dude believe he's in 13 when in actuality he isn't? Maybe the real N13 is dead. He's pretending to be, I mean, just like he's pretending to be Reddington, but it seems like we're going to, like, oh, no. And where we stand now, it seems like they're solidifying that, but that could just be another red herring in a sense. Well, Reddington, I didn't even mean the pun of that, red herring and Reddington. But we don't know if that, like, you, obviously he's like, well, he's kind of slid into the role of Raymond Reddington and even Ilio Koslov. So, like, it wouldn't be that too much of a surprise if this is another thing of, I'm pretending to be this person for other reasons. But it's like, they're coming out, they're going to come after Liz. And he was like, no one is to lay hands on Liz. She's off limits. He's like, okay, yes, you're right. I want to see you face to face to let you know you're right. She is. And then qualify it with the asterisk for now. So it is that situation of Reddington didn't want this N13 stuff to come up because it's going to be catastrophic, especially like what danger it will bring to Liz's doorstep. It's that thing of like, you continue to poke the bear on something you don't understand. Your mom poked the bear on something she didn't understand. It's like, she could have come to me, but she didn't. And we found ourselves in this roller coaster world when we did it, ending up the way it did. Once again, solidifying it seems like the Katarina's dead. I still don't believe that. But hey, I could be 100% wrong. It's just, I wouldn't see them doing that. But hey, like I said, it could be wrong. But I'm curious, what ends up being the byproduct of that. It is also, obviously, like, Reddington's struggling with all of this. Because, like I said, I thought Reddington would kind of come out on top and be like, oh, prove Liz wrong. But I think because he's so distracted by all the other stuff happening in the episode that it's Liz he's going up against, he's not thinking like he normally is. He's getting caught off guard because who is it he's up against? It's Liz. Like, once again, it's a different situation than before. So he has his blinders up. She's his blind spot. Like, he's not, it's because all this other stuff, because he's trying to handle all this other business, especially because some of it, as we can see, relates to Liz, that he doesn't want that to kind of end up. So he's trying to protect Liz's own right in his own right. But I think it's like, she doesn't realize all that I do and I've sacrificed for her, which obviously I've talked about it. Like, people will probably be like, oh, she's kind of ungrateful, isn't she? It's like, considering everything, you can't tell me someone in her circumstances wouldn't be in it. Like, it's not really ungratefulness. It's just kind of like, when you look back, kind of fucked up a lot of stuff in her life, so. But it's just the contrast between Reddington dealing with all that and her kind of enjoying her victory, spending time with Agnes. It's like, oh yeah, she's got the socks, the unicorns for good luck. And then also the ring. It's like, did I ever tell you the story about how your dad proposed to me? It's like, oh. And she even talked to Essie about it, how it's sad that Tom never got an opportunity to really get to know her, So, a lot of interesting things. I'm curious to ultimately see where all of this takes us going forward into the next episode. Liz at the top of the blacklist. I like that. Being numero uno, because she's the most important thing. She's top priority right now. We'll see how that all ends up playing out. Which is kind of great. I mean, you can't also forget that this is picking up. This is still, we're in season 7 territory still. Because this is like, what, episode 4, right? So it's like usually like 22 or 24 episodes. I want to say 22 episodes per season, right? So this would have probably been like this original season 7 finale. Once again, I haven't read into how much they've changed, with like swerving it to make it feel like it's just like, oh, not that this was the original season finale, but this is just another episode in season 8. Like, I mean, so I would assume that this was going to be the original season finale. Like I said, not unless they rework stuff with season 8. The leftover stories they had from season 7, they reworked into season 8. So maybe things shifted, maybe things stay the same. Like I said, I always forget, like, I mean, I want to say it's 22 episodes per season, but it could be 24. I think it's 22, but I could be mistaken. Or 22 or 23. So, like, either this is the season finale, the original season finale, or maybe the next episode is. Regardless, I'm interested to see where things go from here. Things are kind of happening quickly, but like I said, it just feels like that because we're kind of picking up the story where season 7 left off. So it seems like things are happening pretty quickly, super early on in the season to a certain extent, but really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.